Okay, good evening, everyone. We want to go through this week the inyan of if a tzibur missed a parsha or parshiyos, do you make it up in subsequent weeks? So this is a timely topic as we're definitely nearing, hopefully, Be'ez Hashem, the end of COVID-19. So almost all the shuls in the world have missed at least 4 parshiyos, looks like. We've personally here missed 12 parshiyos. So whenever the shuls start up again, if one starts up this Shabbos, the question is, do you start from where you left off? Our last parsha was Kisisa. But do we have to learn from Vayakal Pekudei, the entire Sefer Vayikra, and Parshas Bamidbar? Or do we just learn Bamidbar? Or do we just learn Bahar B'Chakoisai Bamidbar? Like, what's the halacha? If a tzibur missed a Kriyas Hatorah, do they have to make it up? Can they not make it up? What's the halacha? That's what we want to discuss this week. It's a very interesting sugya in that it starts from one of the Rishonim, the Or Zarua, a 13th century Rishon who had a shaila, and essentially around 3/4 of the shir is just, and more than that, is just going to be trying to understand exactly what the Or Zarua meant through the lens of Marimintz and the Sefer Minhagim and other Rishonim. They're all referencing this Or Zarua as far as what to do. So the Or Zarua in number 1 of the source sheet has the following case. We'll do it outside. There was a minig that's brought down by various Rishonim, if I'm not mistaken, it's brought down in Shulchan Aruch as well, that if you have an issue with your friend, or with your enemy, I guess, you'd get up in shul before Kriyas Hatorah on Shabbos and you'd be koivel olav. You would complain that he's taking away my parnasa. He scratched my car, whatever it might be. You have an issue on a friend, so that you get up at tzibur in front of everyone and air your tiny. He would defend himself, and you try to work it out. There was one Shabbos many hundreds of years ago, where on Parshas Emor, it happened to have been, where a yid got up to be koivel, to complain about someone else, and to try to settle it. It was a very difficult case, and it went on and on and on until Shabbos ended, and they had no time to do the Kriyas Hatorah. So this tzibur, this shul, missed Parshas Emor because this yid was being koivel, complaining about his friend the entire time. So the Rav of that shul, what was Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Shimon, Zatzal, it says here, he paskined that next week, they should say Emor and Bahar. They should start with Emor. V'gam Bahar is Sinai Heru'il Karas B'Oiz Shabbos. So they Emor Bahar. It must have been, it sounds like in the Tshuva, a year where it was only Bahar. It wasn't Bahar B'Chukoisai. And that point is extremely relevant when we get to further on in the Sugya. But it seems that it was only a Parshas Bahar. And this Rav Paskin to lane Emor from last week, you have to make up last week, and also lane Bahar this week. And the Or Zarua 100% agrees with this psak, and he says for sure they're obligated to make up the parsha they lost. And he brings 3 or 4 svaras. He brings 3 svaras. Number 1, he says that Kriyas Hatorah is mitakanas Moshe Rabbeinu to finish the entire Torah once a year. Even though there are sources, there was once a 3-year cycle, the Or Zarua is saying that mitakanas Moshe Rabbeinu is to finish the Torah throughout the entire year. And he says that there's no real takana to learn any particular parsha on any particular Shabbos. The did is, Moshe Rabbeinu niskal nikrois HaTorah b'parsha Yosea ula hashlim b'chol shana v'shana, finish the Torah every year. Kedei lashmiel am mitzvos v'chukim. The point of Kriyas Hatorah, it's clear from the Gemara's Megillah as well, that a Metorah, that a translator, the point of reading the Torah was to teach the mitzvah the chukim, and therefore you finish once a year. Don't say that since the time of the parsha is up, so you can no longer make up that parsha. There's no specific takana from anyone to learn a particular parsha or a particular Shabbos. If you want, you can break it up. You can do 7 aliyahs, do 30 psukim a parsha, and then the last parsha of the year have a 3-hour Kriyas Hatorah. It doesn't seem from the Or Zarua there's any takana to learn any parsha on any particular week. Even though we've seen the Gemara Megillah that there's an inyan to learn B'Chukoisai before Shavuos that we did last week, and an inyan to learn Kisava before Rosh Hashanah. That's more mitam minhag. It's not. The Gemara actually says it. The Gemara says it, but it's not mamish b'takanos Moshe Rabbeinu. It's like a nice idea, but it's zichred, not ma'akiv, says the Or Zarua. So first of all, he says there's nothing wrong with doing Emor Bahar. There's no reason you didn't miss Parshas Emor. You didn't miss the opportunity. There's nothing about that Shabbos that is any more or less Emor Dik than any other Shabbos. So for sure you should read Emor Bahar. He goes on to say, even if you want to say there is a keva, there is a specific Shabbos, a parsha assigned to each Shabbos, he proves in the Shir Shel Leviim, the song the Leviim used to sing in the Beis HaMikdash every day. If they missed one day, they can make it up on the next day. Because even if you want to say, it says the Or Zarua, there's a specific Shabbos per parsha, but still you can make it up. Tircha de Tzibura. He says, it's not a Tircha de Tzibura to make up the parsha, because we say in Maseches Sofrim that if the Baal Koirei made a mistake on one pasuk, so he goes back and names the entire parsha. If you realize at the last pasuk that you made a mistake in the first pasuk, you go back to the beginning, land the parsha again. So it says the Or Zarua, there is no Tircha de Tzibura. He's not talking about 12 parshas. He's not talking about laning from Vayakel through Bamidbar. But he's saying laning in Emor Bahar. Bahar Grad is a short parsha. Emor Bahar is not a Tircha de Tzibura. So that's the psak of the Or Zarua. The takana is to finish once a year. So even if I miss the Shabbos, I still have my obligation, mitam takanas Moshe Rabbeinu, to finish once a year. And anyway, says the Or Zarua, there's no particular parsha assigned to any particular Shabbos. And even if there was, you can make it up, like the Shir Shel Leviim they can make up. And don't tie the Tircha de Tzibur, because we see from other places, to lay a parsha again is no Tircha de Tzibur. That's the psak of the Or Zarua. Comes the Maharam Mintz in a German Rishon, late Rishon, the 15th century, 1400s. And a similar shaila happened there. This one's a little more lebedik. They were laning, I think it was Parshas, Vayakel Pekudei. Both these shailas happened this time of year. It was Parshas Vayakel Pekudei in Worms. And the Gabbai called someone up for Shvi'i Chazak. Right? This is the last aliyah. It's a big cover. They get Chazak. Chazak, v'nis chazek, right? And he called up Reuven, and Shimon was not happy, because Shimon felt that he deserved it. A big fight ensued for 2 hours. The Sefer Torah is on the bima, and these 4 or 5 individuals are fighting over, should Reuven get the aliyah, should Shimon get the aliyah? Now, listen to the Maisa. This would never happen today. After 2 hours, meaning today, after a minute, right? But then after 2 hours, the tzibur got fed up. One Yid went over to the Aron Kodesh, took out a second Sefer Torah, went into the youth room, the Beis HaKnesset Shel Bachurim, they had back then also in Worms, a youth room. He went to the youth room, and they finished Shvi'i in the youth room, except for those 4 or 5 Bali Machloikis that were in the main shul. The entire tzibur heard Shvi'i of Pekudei, V'yaka Pekudei, and that was it. The Shah came up, there's a big hefsek in the Kriya. You lay in the first 6 aliyahs, you had a 2-hour break or a 2-hour fight, and then you lay in the 7th aliyah. So the shayla was, is that a hefsek? That was the shayla that was asked. So that is not relevant to us, obviously, because the question there is, did they have the Kriya? So the Maharam Mintz paskins that for sure they were yaitz to the Kriya. There's no question about it. There's no din hefsek by Kriyas Hatorah. Ideally, you want to do it together, but it's not like a birchas mitzvah or birchas hanenim before you start the mitzvah, before you eat the food. There's no din hefsek. Then he goes on to say in the middle of the tshuva that even if they wouldn't have finished the parsha, let's say it would have been batal mavutal, they would have lain 6 aliyahs, which means nothing. They weren't yaitz to the Kriya at all, let's say. Argues the Maharam Mintz, they still would not make it up next week. They would not be laning anything more than Parshas Vayikra. In other words, Zok the Maharam Mintz, if it's Tzibur missed Vayakel Pekudei, they do not make it up the next week. They lose their opportunity. All they lane is Vayikra, and his source is the Or Zarua, is our Or Zarua. How does that work? So there are 4 points in this Maharam Mintz. Point number 1, he says that he quotes the Or Zarua, and he says, "Hine loy kosav," is on page 2 in the underlined part. Loy kosav rak im bitel hashabbos echad hatamid. The Or Zarua only talks about that they're mevatel 1 Shabbos, that they lay in the Shabbos haba shnei sidoros. They lay in 2 parshas the Shabbos haba. He didn't talk about in bitel gimel or dalet Shabbosos that you lay all those sidras in 1 Shabbos. You're getting 3 or 4 parshas. He mistaber the iloike v'chein mistaber. This makes sense. The iloike ain't the darasav. So Nakuda number one in the Maramins is, for sure, if you move out to more than one Shabbos, there's definitely no Tashlum, then Ein L'Davar Soif. Now, I'm not sure what that Svar is, meaning, I guess as far as, let's say that there'd be some pandemic after Parshas Breishis, and it goes away right before V'zayis Bracha, right? So, would we lay in the entire Chumash? That seems Ein L'Davar Soif. Meaning 12 parashiyos were clearing. If it was 30 parashiyos, it wouldn't be a shayla probably, right? No one's going to say for 30. So he's saying that the case of the Or Zarua, which is our only source for this, is one Shabbos. Because everybody agrees you're not going to lay noyach through mitzavim vayelech. Everyone agrees to that, right? So where's the cutoff point? Zok there, the cutoff point is one parasha finished. Svar number one, Ein L'Davar Soif. Svar number two, that if they're mevatel 2 Shabbosos, we're not going to lay 3 sedras on the third Shabbos. To lay matzinu shum duchte shekorin gimel sedaros b'chad Shabbos. Nishda azazach. There's no such thing as laning 3 parshiyos, 3 sedras in one Shabbos. No such thing. Okay. V'chein mashma l'shoynoi, says the Maramins. It's also mashma zoi from the Or Zarua, because he says Zikru b'Shabbos above base parshiyos ad kan l'shoynoi, laying on the next Shabbos, which happened to have been Parshas Bahar, and the previous Shabbos in that case happened to have been Parshas Emor. So it was 2 parshiyos. Says the Maramins, the Kasha, halafamim nimtzu gimel parshiyos, shahayu shtei sidros devukas b'Shabbos shavar. The Or Zarua knew full well that you have many times, it's around 6 to 9 double Shabbosim. It's around a quarter of the time relating 2 parashas. Around a quarter of the time. Relating 2 parashas or a Shabbos before 2 parashas. But if you miss the Shabbos before 2 parashas, you want to make it up, it's lane 3. If you miss the Shabbos of 2 parashas, you have to make it up, the next Shabbos lane 3. So around a quarter of the time, we're either a Shabbos before or a Shabbos of 2 parashas. So says the Maramins, the Or Zarua should have said something. This is what he should have said. Yikru b'Shabbos haba, kol sidroi sheroi likroi b'Shabbos she'avar im sidr shel Shabbos chagavna. Zok the Maramins, if the Or Zarua meant to extend this chiddush to lane 3 parashiyos, he should have said that. The Or Zarua only said you missed last Shabbos, you make it up this Shabbos, and then lane 2 parashiyos. Why didn't the Or Zarua say, and if last Shabbos was a double parasha, or if this Shabbos is a double parasha, you lane 3. Why didn't he say that? Says the Maramins, because he held, the Or Zarua held, that we never lane 3 parashas. You never find 3 parashas. You can only lane 2. He's medayik from his lashon. And then he further, yeah?
We said at the beginning, though, that Moshe Rabbeinu was just masakin that you should finish the entire Torah the whole year. However, we want to divide it up is really up to us. So we could essentially lane 4 parshas in one Shabbos if we really wanted to.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. So it's interesting that you hit the nakuda, you hit the nail on the head, as they say, that the shaila is which part of the Or Zarua are you going to focus on? So he's focusing on the particular case. I'm just going to mute it. He's going to, the Mara Mintz is focusing on the passages in the Or Zarua that we just quoted. The parts where he's talking about 2 parshas. But Eli is making a great point that in the beginning, the whole Takanas Moshe Rabbeinu part of the Or Zarua is tshuva, where he says there's a Takana take all the parshas. According to that, there should not be any hakpada on how many. Unless you say there's some outside cheshbon, if you can't have more than 2. And the Or Zarua is just using that svara to justify the Shabbos you missed. But I agree with you, Eli, that the Pashat Pshat and Or Zarua from there, it's very heavy on the side that you can lay 10 parshas, whatever you need in order to make sure you finish the entire Chumash. But that's what the Maramins is saying. He's saying, number 1, Ein L'Davar Soif. If we could extend it beyond 1 Shabbos, Ein L'Davar Soif. Says number 2, Lo Shamanu ever laying 3 parshas. Number 3, it's Meduyik in the Or Zarua that he doesn't say anything about 3 parshas. And furthermore, and then he says, in the case of the Maramins, which is from Vayaka Bakuda to Vayikra, his Ein Svar B'Shabbos Echad Likrois Misei for the Sefer. He says, you cannot lane from 2 Svarim on Shabbos, on 1 Shabbos. You can't lane Vayechi Shmois, Bakude, Vayikra, By midbar, you can't do that. You can't do that. Masei, Devarim, you can't do that. Ubefrat, according to our minig, with this one oile, usually it's the Revi who gets the Aliyah, and the Revi goes the end of the first parsha, beginning of the second parsha. So to mechaber two svarim with one Aliyah, says the Orzu, that's no good. So Zok there, for two reasons, they're only going to lane Vayikra the next week. Had they not have laned Vayakal Pekude. Number one, no such thing as three parshas, only two parshas. And number two, you can't go from Sefer to Sefer, and especially according to our minig, that we have one oile, one person with the Aliyah who's mechaber both parshas. You can't do that between two svarim. That's the Maramins. So according to the Maramins, this Shabbos, if we'd open up this Shabbos, we'd only be laning by midbar. That's it. For two reasons. You can't do B'chukoyisai by midbar, and you can't do Bar B'chukoyisai by midbar. We can't do last week's parshas, and ain't takon l'chatzah, and the place can say, if last week was double parsha, you can't just pick one and that's it. You have to pick two or nothing. So according to the Maramins, it's clear that the Shabbos you start at most, you're going to lane two parshas. If you start parshas Nasai, you're lane by midbar Nasai. If you start Baloischa, Nasai Baloischa. If you start by midbar, you just lane by midbar. That's what he says. This is brought down in Shulchan Aruch in Simon Kuf Lamed Hey.
I'm sorry, Rabbi, I didn't get that last part. Are you saying you can't go from one sefer of the Torah to another? For example, from Vayikra to Bamidbar, you can't lane two parshas from two svarim in the same Shabbos?
Yes, you cannot, in one Kriya, in the one Shabbos, in the one Kriya at least, you can't go from the end of one sefer, from the end of Bereshis, say Vayechi Shmois. Let's say they missed parshas Vayechi. You can't do Vayechi Shmois. You can't lane. The svarim are separate, and they can't be combined in one Kriya.
What is the source of that? What is the source of that? Where do we get this
Svara.
from?
His Lashon is Ein Svara. A lot of this is just his, Ein Svara. I mean, Lamaisa, it is interesting. Hashem didn't have to give us 5 different books, right? It could have been one sefer. There's nothing, it's not like there's a limit to how many chapters you can have in one. It could have been, it is interesting that each sefer has its own name. Sefer Yitzira, and then Sefer Geula, Teres Koinen, like, it's in the Sefer Torah itself. There's 4 lines in between each sefer, so it definitely is a distinct entity. But he quotes no source at all. So he just ain't svara to do it. Ubefrak have one person mechaber them in his one aliyah. That's what he says.
Although we actually do this on Sukkot in terms of when we finish Simchas Torah, we finish the Torah, we go back to Bereshis right away after, right?
Correct, but we lane Bereshis the next Shabbos also. So that laning of Bereshis would not be part of the typical classic Takanas. It's not the same Kriyas Torah as V'zayis HaBracha. V'zayis HaBracha is the last parsha. We should learn in Simchas Torah. That's the last parsha. But the Bereshis we lane again on Parshas Bereshis. The Maramins will probably tell you that's just like you want to start off, but Chas and Bereshis. But it's not really the Kriya of Parshas Bereshis. It's a good point. So that's what he's going to say, but I think it's a good point. So we have this machlokes. We have the Or Zerua saying what he said, and the svar that Eli said is that Takanas Moshe Rabbeinu, I don't care how you do it, just do it, essentially. And the Maramins, who's attaching 2 halachas. He's saying you can't do more than 2 parashas, which would basically say you can never make up more than 1 Mish Shabbos. Even if you have 3 single parashas, right? You can never make up 1 Mish Shabbos, and a quarter of the time you can't even make up 1 Mish Shabbos. Even 1 is too much, because you have a double parasha involved. And the second svar is you definitely cannot span 2 svarim in 1 kriya. The Maramins, the Ramah in number 3, Kuf Lamed Hey, Siv Beis, just brings down the Or Zerua. His lashon is, listen to his lashon. In Bitlu Shabbos Achas, if they were mevatel Kriyas HaTorah on 1 Shabbos, Kriyas HaParsha B'tzibur, l'Shabbos Haba, Korin Oisa Parsha, Im HaParsha Shayacha L'Oisa Shabbos, Or Zerua. Because if they're mevatel 1 Shabbos, the Kriya of the Parsha B'tzibur, the next Shabbos they lane that Parsha with the Parsha that's shy for that Shabbos. So the words, the Ramah says Shabbos Achas. And he says, you combine that with the Parsha of that week. You can definitely maybe see a Maharam Mintz influence in the Ramah's understanding of the Or Zerua, or you could just say, that was the case of the Or Zerua. As we say, Maisa Shahaya, Kachaya. The case was they missed 1 Shabbos. The Ramah is pretty much bringing down the words of the case of the Or Zarua, but that does not mean that he agrees with the Maharamintz. So for the Ramah, it's unclear. In number 4, the Magen Avram brings the Maharamintz on this din, on his first din, that you can't lane 3 parshas. And then in the brackets, at the bottom of number 4, he writes, Uvahagois minhagim, in a sefer called Hagois minhagim, Kasav al-Zev nirin dvar ve'enai. That the Maharamintz's understanding of the Or Zarua, I don't agree with, says the sefer minhagim. L'chayra, it's we said before, the reason Eli said that the sefer minhagim seems to hold, what do you mean? Takanas Moshe Rabbeinu, let's do it, whether it's 2 parshas, whether it's 13 parshas. We got to do it. We got to finish all the parshas in the span of a year. And as far as the diyukim of the Maharamintz, they'll say, listen, Ma'aseh Shahaya Kachaya. But there's no problem with spanning 2 svarim, and there's no problem of blending more than 2 parshas. So it's a machloikis, the Maharamintz and the Sefer Minhagim, how to understand the Or Zarua. So we come now to the next level of Poskim. So number 5, we'll do it outside. The Be'er Hativ quotes the Maharamintz. And let us not forget, the Magen Avram also is going with the Maharamintz. He's quoting the Sefer Minhagim in brackets, but he's going like both halachas the Maharamintz. The Magen Avram would tell us this Shabbos just Bamidbar, and next Shabbos Bamidbar Nasan, right? The Bir Hativ quotes the Maharamintz, that's it, and he ends up by saying Va'ayin Teres Zekanim. The Teres Zekanim also goes like the Maharamintz. Let's hold off on the graph for 1 second. Go to page 3. The Aruch HaShulchan, however, says, and we're just going to read the underlined part. So he quotes the first chiddush of the Maharamintz as it's brought in the Magen Avram, and he says, "Dvar of Tmuim." I don't understand what the Maharamintz is saying. The Hakaven Dechayva Hu Lahashlim Mashalekar. Well, since it's an obligation to fill in what you missed, Mali Trey Mali Klas. What does it make them? It's 2 or 3. Well, what's wrong with 3? Vafilim Loikaru Kama Shabbosos. Even if you missed a number of Shabbosim, i.e., you missed around 8 Shabbosim, 12 parshas. Nira Shechoyva Lahashlimam Kulam. You have to finish them all. V'chein Ismi Shapasakain Lalacha. It goes to Eli Rabbah and Hagois Minhagim. It's also Magen Gibayrim that says that you have to lane all the parshas. So according to the Aruch HaShulchan, so far, we have to lane from Vayakel Pekudei through Bamidbar. He quotes the second halacha of the Maharamintz, that you can't go from Sefer to Sefer, which is a separate cheshbon, right? It's a separate cheshbon. He says you can't go from Sefer to Sefer. Again, v'tamuahu, says the Aruch HaShulchan. Is that like Ma'akiv? That one aliyah, one oile connects the 2 parshas? Have the guy finish Revi at the end of Chukoisai, and have Chamishi start from Bamidbar. So that's not carved in stone. That's not a din d'oraisa. It's not ma'akiv to have one person mechaber both parshas. What isser? I think what Eli was asking. What isser is there if you mechaber 2 svarim? So the Maharamintz is ein svara. So Aruch HaShulchan is saying yesh svara. I mean, the Maharamintz is not bringing any source. He's just saying ein svara. Aruch HaShulchan says, what isser am I violating if I lane even with one aliyah, with one oila between 2 svarim? Dr. Aruch HaShulchan, either way, you have a chiyuv to be mashlim. Aruch HaShulchan will tell us to lane from Vayakel through Bamidbar. So it's a machlokes. The Or Zarua is the source, right? Then it's a machlokes between. It's a machlokes between the Maharamintz and the Sefer Minhagim, where we have the Magen Avram going to the Maharamintz and the Ber Hativ and the Teres Zekanim, and we have the Eli Rabbah and the Aruch HaShulchan going like the Sefer Minhagim. So it's a pretty fair machlokes. The Mishnah Brura number 8, he brings down all the shitas and he's not machriya. The Mishnah Brura is not always machriya. If you look at the Hakdama to Sefer Mishnah Brura, he does not write that his intention of the Sefer is to paskin halacha. That's not the goal. The goal is to malakit, to bring down all the different poskim, all the heintige poskim, for a poskim to come and see how he wants to paskin. The Mishnah Brura writes in Hakdama that he's like the next Ber Hativ. The Ber Hativ did the job until a certain generation, and the Mishnah Brura is coming out to do the job for the next generation. It's good to see it. I'll just digress for like mamish 20 seconds or a little more. He writes, I called it the Mishnah Berurah. He explains the words of the Shulchan Aruch. He explains the source from the Gemara and the Poskim. I'm going to gather together all the psakim that are spread out amongst all the different Mefarshim. Ali Rabba, Pri Megadim, Birkei Yosef, Ma'amar Mordechai, Rabbas Keina. Asher Hayu Harbe Mehem Achar Ber Heitiv. Many of these Acharim came after the Ber Heitiv. Lo Huvu B'Sharei Tshuva. It's not the Sharei Tshuva. The Ber Heitiv and the Sharei Tshuva are the two other Sefer Likutim that the Chavetz Chaim himself printed on the page with him. Right? Came out right only in certain places. He does not write anywhere in his Hakdama when he's explaining, the Chavetz Chaim is explaining why he wrote the Sefer. He does not write to Paskin Halacha. He happens to Paskin Halacha in many places, but that's not his goal. It's not to Paskin Halacha. So this is an example of that where it happens many times. The Mishnah Berurah brings all the Shitas. So he brings the Mara Mintz, and then he points out that the Eli Rabbah, that he brings the Hagayis Min Hagen, the Eli Rabbah, v'chein hiskim Eli Rabbah, v'chein noita das Magen Gibayrim, that you should learn all the parashas. There's no such thing as a limit of 3, but the mice of 2. But the mice of the Mishnah Berurah is not machriya. Then he brings, some say you can't go from Sefer to Sefer. The second Chiddush of the Mara Mintz, and he says that the Shulchan Atzei Shitim says if one wants to connect the two Svarim together, ki ein moichin the other. We're not going to protest. That's the Mishnah Berurah. So the Mishnah Berurah is not machriya. So we have the Magen Avraham against the Aruch HaShulchan. Magen Avraham will tell us this Shabbos only by Midbar. Aruch HaShulchan would say this Shabbos from Bayakov to by Midbar. Mishnah Berurah, not machriya. Okay, that's part 1. Part 2 is a curveball. There's a sefer called Sharei Ephraim. The Sharei Ephraim is written by Ephraim Zalman Margulis. He wrote the Beis Ephraim, Chuvas Beis Ephraim, and he is one of the main poskim in Hilchos Kriyas Hatorah. Now the Mishnah Berurah brings the Sharei Ephraim all the time. If you notice, number 8 by Mishnah Berurah, I underlined the next halach he brings a different Sharei Ephraim, a different halach of Sharei Ephraim. But on that page itself, he brings 2 or 3 times the Sharei Ephraim. It's a big sefer in Hilchos Kriyas Hatorah. Says the Sharei Ephraim will do it outside. He says that if you notice in the Or Zeruah's case and the case of the Mara Mintz, what happened? You had a tzibur in shul, and they couldn't lane because there was a fight, because the guy was being kavil on his friend. But you had a tzibur in shul who were mechuyev in Kriyas Hatorah. Zok the Sharei Ephraim. If you don't have a tzibur in shul, if for some reason, maybe there's a pandemic, where there's no minyan in shul, the shul itself is nisbatel, there's no hashlama. There's only hashlama if the minyan is there and they couldn't learn. Let's say you find it's a puzzle of Sefer Torah. The only one you have is puzzle. Okay, so now we can't learn. It's fixed after Shabbos. Next Shabbos, lane 2 parashas. But if no one came to shul, so then there's no obligation to make it up. And in the footnote on the bottom, he writes, the dafka hecha de bnei chiyuv likrois elishir lehem oinis. Only if there's a minyan together, and now it's chal v'chiyuv. We gave it a couple months ago. The shir on Kriyas Hatorah chavis yachar chavis tzibur. Says the Sharei Ephraim, it's a chavis tzibur. If I have a tzibur in the room and it's chal v'chiyuv, they have to make it up. If there was an oinus, if there's no minyan there, there's no obligation. There's no obligation not to make up. Then you don't have to make it up. Again, according to the Or Zeruah, there's never an obligation on Shabbos to lane any specific parasha. I mean, according to the Or Zeruah, I'm not sure if the Sharei Ephraim is going to fit so much with the Or Zeruah, because according to the Or Zeruah, you didn't miss the Shabbos. If you missed one part, in his case, the missed parashas Emor. Or Zeruah's whole gang is that you didn't miss parashas Emor. There's nothing about that Shabbos that has any more to do with Emor than any other Shabbos. Just happy to Chazal put it there. But there's nothing intrinsically connecting any parashas to any Shabbos. The Sharei Ephraim is saying there is. That Shabbos is Shabbos parashas Emor. And if there's no tzibur there, so that's it. Next week, Bahar. So I think from the Or Zeruah, you'd see not like the Sharei Ephraim. But the Sharei Ephraim is a different angle. The whole shaila of Hashlama is only if you had the minyan and the minyan disbanded. If you go back one more time to page 2, it's an interesting Gra. The Gra writes, what's the source of this Ramah that if you miss the Shabbos, you can make it up? He says, The beginning of the fourth parak of Brachas is the Ramah's source. That if a person missed the Shacharis, you can make it up with the Mincha. You missed the Mincha, you daven 2 Ma'ariv. Right, Hashlam is Tefillah. Now, I was once told by Chashav Rav that the Bira Gran Shulchan Aruch is not coming to say Pshat in Rabbi Yosef Karoi or Moshe Islis. He's not coming to explain the source of the author of the Shulchan Aruch and the author of the Ramah. He's coming to say Pshat in the words of the Shulchan Aruch and the words of the Ramah. The Ramah's source is clearly the Or Zarua. To my knowledge, the Or Zarua does not bring Gemara in Brachas and Perek Dalet as a raya, as a makkah. He's basically Shir Shal Yoim and other things, right? The Gra is not so concerned with what's the Ramah's source that he brings in Darkei Moshe. The Gra is coming to say Pshat in the words of the Ramah. That was the Gra's Malach and Shulchan Aruch. You know, there happens a number of times the Gra brings a source for halacha that you know is not really the source of Rabbi Yosef Karoi. Open to Beis Yosef, you see where he's coming from. The Gra learns that Shulchan Aruch was Makubal upon Klal Yisrael. Lav Dafka was Rabbi Yosef Karoi's Psak, or Moshe Islis' Psak Makubal. It was the text of the Shulchan Aruch. So Zok the Goin, the marker for the words of the Ramah is the Mishnah in Brachas. The Gemara in Brachas, you can make up a tefillah. So according to that, l'choira, it's only going to be one Shabbos. You can only make up the next tefillah. If you miss Shachris and Mincha, you can't daven 2 Ma'ariv. So you can't daven 3 Ma'ariv. You can only daven 2 Ma'ariv, right? So according to the Gra, we'd only be able to make up one Shabbos. That being said, it's interesting to note, number 7, Teksefes Ma'aser Rav, when the Gra got thrown in jail by the Goyim for no good reason, he missed 4 Parshias. When he came out of jail, he asked the Baal Kari to lay the 4 Parshias for him. But that's Stam Chiddush because no tzibur missed Kriyas Hatorah. That was an individual. If a person's sick on Shabbos, he can't make it to Kriyas Hatorah, Lo Shamanu, that he gets a meeting together next Shabbos to make it up. Our whole discussion is a tzibur missed it. Whether they were in shul and they couldn't lane, or they didn't come to shul and they didn't lane. But the Gra and Ma'aser Rav and Teksefes Ma'aser Rav is a Pezundar Chiddush. That being said, I was trying to find, and we'll end the show with this, I was trying to find, like, where else are you going to find Makairis for this idea of whether or not you can lane more than 2 parshas on a Shabbos? Or you can make up a Shabbos missed. So it is brought down in cases where, like this year, right, 2nd day Shavuos is Shabbos. So we're going to chutzlarts, we're going to lay in the Kriyas Hatorah of Yom Tov. In Eretz Yisrael, they're going to lay in Parshas Naso. So then we're going to be off 1 parsha. Let's say you're traveling to Eretz Yisrael for Parshas Chukas, and they're holding by Balak, and we're doing Chukas. So should you make it up? So number 10, the Shlomo Zalman Auerbach and the Lichas Shlomo says there's no need to make it up. You don't have to. You missed the parsha. What can you miss the parsha? Because if you want to, in the footnote he says you're allowed to have a minyan and you can make it up if you want to. But there's no obligation to. In Yom Tov Sheni Kilchasa, he brings from Rabbi Yoshev that he says, let's say you come to Eretz Yisrael, the same Shaila, Ben Chutzlitz come to Eretz Yisrael, and let's say he comes and he missed a double parsha in Chutz La'aretz. So Rabbi Yoshev says it's better the Chutzlikim should lay by themselves, let's say the Achar Moshe Kedoshim, and then go to an Israeli Parshas Emor. I don't think it ever comes out like that with being off. Maybe it does with Pesach, but he lanes Achar Moshe Kedoshim by themselves, then Emor. If you can't do that, says Rabbi Yoshev, you can lane Achar Moshe Kedoshim Emor. You can do that, that's not a problem. Or Tazriyah Mitzvah Achar Moshe Kedoshim. So Rabbi Yoshev has no problem with a person laning 4 parshas in 1 shot. Just to make a sikkum, this week Parshas Bamidbar, right? There are really kind of 3 options over here, right? Number 1, if you take the Maramintz and the Magen Avram and the Ber Heitev and the Teres Zekanim and the Oilas Tamid, those 5 places, there's 2 reasons why we're only going to lane Parshas Bamidbar. Number 1, you can't lane 3 parshas. Last week was 2. You can't lane 3. Number 2, you can't go from Sefer to Sefer in 1 Kriya. It's just Bamidbar. The Shari Ephraim will also tell us, that's the 6th pasuk, will also tell us only 1 parsha. Why? Because you don't make up parshas that there was no tzibur for. There was no obligation on those Shabbosim, and therefore it's finished. You can't make it up. On the other hand, the other extreme, you have the Aruch HaShulchan, which will tell us, and the Eli Rabbah, they'll tell us, and the Sefer Minhagim, and the Magen Yibayrim, they'll tell us to lane 13 parshas. Like the Or Zarua said, Moshe Rabbeinu was Mesakin, finished the whole Torah. And I guess theoretically speaking, if they're Mavatal from Bereshis until Zayis Bracha, you would lane the entire Torah. You could carve out a third sheet, which would be the Gra. If you want to go be'etzem like the Aruch HaShulchan, right? And you want to say that theoretically speaking, you can go from Sefer to Sefer, and you can lane more than two parashiyos, but the Gra says you can only make up one Shabbos. It's like Tfilas Tashlumin. So according to the Gra, if you combine the Gra with the Aruch HaShulchan, would come out with Bahar B'chukoisei by Midbar. Because theoretically speaking, the Gra might have no problem with three parashiyos, and he might have no problem going from Sefer to Sefer. I'm curious to know which four Shabbos the Gra missed. Maybe it was the Vayechi, Shmais, Ve'er Boy. I have no idea which one. If the four of them spanned over two Sfam, I'd be curious to know. But we don't see in the Gra anything about the Machloikis, the Maramins, the Sefer Minhagim. So it could be the Gra holds, you can go between two parashiyos. You can do three parashiyos, but he would say only one Shabbos. So either it's just by Midbar, or it's everything, or according to the Gra, it's Bahar B'Koisai and by Midbar. I just want to finish with one thing, and then Eli, I'll take your question. I had it with what I call a boich svara. I have a svara from my belly that I wanted to tie, and it's like this. I wanted to say that, let's say you're living in a little dwarfle in North Carolina, right, where there's no minion there. You have 8 families there, you have 8 yidden, you have no minion. That's whatever, that's where you're living. And Amal, you get company, so you have like 3 Shabbosim out of the year, you get a minion. Are you going to tell me that they lane 13 parashiyos each one of those Shabbosim? Meaning that this halacha is said in a place where you have a minion kavua. So you have a minion, and then you missed a week or 2 or 3 or 4. So then you make it up because you have a tzibor kavua. You have a minion kavua in this place, and it was nisbato for some reason for X amount of weeks. You have to make it up. But if you have no minion kavua, so then there's nothing to make up. The 1 or 2 times a year that in some Yupitzville, North Carolina has a minion, they're not going to lane all the parashas since the last Shabbos they had a minion because they're not a place the minion kavua. That's pashut. I didn't see places can talk about that, but that's pashut. So the shah is like this: can we time it? There's been a halacha that it's also to have minyanim for the past 7-8 weeks. It's been a halacha, right? So is it like we're in Yupitzville, North Carolina? Is it like there's no minion? I mean, the minion it wasn't like a Sefer Torah was puzzle, but there was a fight in shul, or there was like, even if you want to title, it was like flooding, so we couldn't get into the shul. There was a hurricane. This was like a clear suffix pikuach nefesh. There was a clear psak not to have minyan. So maybe it was nisbatel the minyan kavua. In which case, we'd be like, it's like we just didn't have minyan kavua for these 8 weeks, and now we're coming back. That'd be a boich svar to say just lane by midbar. Bottom line is, you're hard pressed not to say that me'ikar adin parshas b'midbar. That's me'ikar adin. If you come back to shul next Shabbos, then b'midbar nasai. No one says not do b'midbar nasai. You have to do b'midbar nasai. But this week would be just b'midbar. That's ikar adin. As over the Mara mints, you have the Shari Ephraim thrown as well, and you have the Pesach over there. But you have on the other side the Aruch HaShulchan. Some say it's the Pesach Acharon. Some say Rabbi Schreck said that. So it's a chumrah. I think it's a recommended chumrah to do that. But the Tircha de Tzibura aspect of 13 parashiyos would for sure be machriya. The Ikar Adin would be like the Magen Avraham. If it wasn't Tircha de Tzibura, I don't know, because I'm a big Aruch HaShulchan yid, so I don't know. But the Tircha de Tzibura, I cannot put a tzibur through that 13 parashiyos with a face mask on, even without a face mask on. It's a Tircha de Tzibura. The Arizur is talking about one parashah. The 13 parashiyos, and there's so much as Shari Ephraim plus all other places in Magen Avraham. Shver to Zagin, there's a chiyuv to lane all the parashiyos, Mikra Adin. But Zichar to be choishish, the Aruch HaShulchan is very praiseworthy and will be a big schus. Anyone who's able to lane 13 parashiyos definitely is advisable. If you find 9 other like-minded medaktikim b'mitzvahs, then one should lane all the parashiyos, if that's possible. That is Lani's daiti. But you got a tiny line.
Rabbi Schreck, yeah. So the Maisa from Hatorah versus the psak of the Gra seem to contradict each other, right?
Correct. Yes, it's a contradiction, but it's not just a contradiction because the Gra is talking in the Bir HaGra and Shulchan Aruch. He's talking about a tzibor mist. There is no halach in Shulchan Aruch that if Rabbi Schreck went to the bathroom during Sheni of Vayigash, that I have to run now to another shul to hear the Kriyas. I know some people will do that, but if it's a chayvus yachid, the chayr you do. But But if the Maisa, no one does that, right?
Right.
The Tosfos Maisa Rav, it's not just a contradiction, but it's beyond that because the Gra himself just punked Mr. Kriya, and that it doesn't say in the Maisa Rav if he did it b'yichidas or b'tzibur. L'char he did it b'tzibur. There's no such thing as the Kriya b'yichidas. But either way, it's the Gra l'char being chayshish for a chayvus yachar. But that being said, it definitely is a stira. So if you look at number 10, Alicha Shloima, when an Americanish Shabbacher asked Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, he wants to make up the parsha he missed. Shlomo Zalman told him, Nazaf by Rabbeinu. Like gave him muster, and he says, if you have all the chumras of the Gra, if you act like the Gra, then you can keep the Gra. The Bacha came with the Gra in Maisa Rav. Yeah. Shlomo Zalman told him, calm down. You're not the Gra, don't make it up. Even though officially held you can do it, he didn't like when the Bacha used to ask it. So it's probably it's a personal chumrah for the Gra. I think that's what you'd say.
I hear. So I have a little Maisa that happened a few years back when I was in Muncie. Rav Steinman came to visit, and apparently it was when there was a discrepancy between the Eretz Yisrael leaning and the American leaning. And I heard when either it was when he came here or when he went back, he made up the parsha that he missed also.
Okay.
But I also was wondering though, how the inyan of tashlumin by tefillah. What's the kesher between Kriyas Hatorah and that? I mean, they're two totally separate inyanim, two totally separate halachos. Why are we even comparing them? What does one have to do with the other?
Right. It's an interesting thought. Also, as you asked that question, I'm thinking it's also not like the Or Zarua. I mean, the Chazal Masakin, the August Masakin, a Shachris min Chamayim. If you missed it, you missed the Shachris. But Vayter, according to the Or Zarua, you didn't miss anything.
Yeah, exactly.
But the Grov Vayter sounds like not like the Or Zarua. The Grov Vayter, like the Shari Friend, they're saying that no, each Shabbos has its parasha. When you missed it, so you missed the Shachris Kilo. I have to make it up.
If you hold like that shita, then I could maybe hear it. But if we were going like the original way in the Or Zarua, then what's the connection whatsoever?
I think that'd be another raya, not like it's funny because we have the Maramins who seem to be totally ignoring that part of the Or Zarua. Then we have a Gra and the Shari Ephraim also that seem not to go like that.
Right.
So the truth is, but the Or Zarua does say, even if you want to say that it is Shai for a specific Shabbos, still he has from Shil Shil Yoyim, he has his precedent. You can make it up. So the Or Zarua himself is not saying with certainty. He's not definitively saying that it's not miyuchus to any particular parsha. Saying even if it is miyuchus to a particular week, you can still make it up. So then that would be consistent with the Gra, with the Maramins. But
so I have one more fundamental question actually.
Sure.
That does this. The whole, as far as I understood, the whole inyan behind Kriyas Hatorah is an exercise in limud Hatorah for the tzibur, right? So if that's the case, then for example, in our situation, where let's say, so I've been reading all the parshas at home every Shabbos, right, from the Chumash. So I'm fulfilling that aspect of limud Torah. So what exactly am I making up by trying to make up and laying the parsha from the Torah at a different date? I mean, I've been osik in limud Torah on so far on all the Shabbos that we've been off. What exactly are we accomplishing by trying to make up this inyan of reading the parshas?
But could one use that svara to never go to Kriyas Hatorah and say I'm doing it at home?
So I don't know if you could go that far and say that. I hear what you're saying, but at the same time, where I was prevented from going to shul and I had no option, and I was mamish bonus. So what am I accomplishing by going to shul and trying to lane all the parshas at once? So
the same thing you'd accomplish on the Shabbos that you had shul. I mean, we're not going to say that those who didn't do Shnai Mikra have to come to shul, and those who did. As much as you're asking a good question in that the reason for Kriyas Hatorah was, like you're saying, for a person to be oisik in all the halachas of the Chadish Chum Shetar all year long. But the gather of the takana was b'tzibur. So even if a person is doing what Chazal want them to do, but if it's not in the context of the gather of the takana, they still have to do it.
Right, but it's like you were saying, like you're living in North Carolina, you're in the middle of nowhere, you don't have a minion. What are you supposed to do?
Right, so that's my boy svara. I call my boy. I haven't seen anyone say that. Meaning, but I think it's a good svara that there's no minion. It's not like if an oinus means there's a flood or there was a fight or there was a psul. That means that even if you want to go out to shara, let's say there's a flood, so no one can come to shul, right? That was an oinus. It wasn't a halacha that it's us to have it tzibur. Right? The concept has been a halacha. that you can't have tefillah b'tzibur. It's been a halacha. So that's like there's not. It's more than the Shari Ephraim. The Shari Ephraim is saying if there's a flood and you can't come to shul, you don't make it up. I'm saying that you would make it up. Let's go down with the Shari Ephraim. But there's no din. You don't have a minyan. There's no halacha of minyan those weeks. So you're like you're in North Carolina. That's one time. I haven't seen any place can say that. I would have to discuss it with people that are older than I before I would use that. But either way, there would just be another sniff to make us feel better if we're only going to lane by midbar. I mean, listen, the Shabbos we come back, my ideal would be to have one minyan that does just the Parsha Shavua, and the week before, depending on, if it's two, and another minyan that does all of them. If I can find, I have my son, but if I can find 8 other people that would be willing to daven Azav Vasikin and have, so then we'll see if we can do that. If not, then the Ikra din for sure is like the Marmint, unused daiti.
I think our situation is even stronger than the North Carolina situation, because for us, it was usher to have a minyan. We weren't even allowed to, even if we wanted to, or we could have had it. It was like the most extreme situation possible.
Right. Well, it's not just we're potter because you don't have 10 people. We have 10 people, but it's usher. It's mamish like a kumva say not to come. It's like mamish
exactly.
mitzvah. One could argue.
Yeah.
I hear that far very stark. But still, might is an Aruch HaShulchan. But this far would be not. But this far we're saying now, the Aruch HaShulchan might agree to. We're saying Aruch HaShulchan is just saying that there's no such thing as going with 2 svarim. That's not a problem, and there's no issue with having 13 parshas. He's not bothered by that. Aruch HaShulchan agrees that if you live in Yupitzville and you get a minyan for the first time in Parshas V'eschanon, you're not going to lane the entire Torah, right?
Right.
You're laying that parsha because there's no minyan kavua. But you have to have a minyan kavua in order to be shaykh b'chlal to the whole Takanas Moshe Rabbeinu. You have to. I don't know. Maybe the Orzu would say don't lane. I mean, if the whole Kriyas Torah is to finish the Torah the whole year.
Yeah.
So L'maisa, if you take that svar very literally, and you're in a place where you get a minyan twice a year, maybe you wouldn't lane because you're not anyway too strong Moshe Rabbeinu's Takana.
Right. Or I could ask you also, what's the point of laning that specific week's parsha in that situation? You could lane Parshas Bereshis for that matter. Why are you laning any particular parsha? You could lane from any parsha you want at that point.
Okay, I mean, I guess we always come back to the fact that Orzur does have it sad that there is this din of this parsha and this. He's going. It's not like he's klar saying that it's just. I need you to get from Bereshis to Zoysa Bracha between this and this date, so you figure out the rest. He has it sad. Not like that. He has decided that the specific Shabbos are it is relevant.
Yeah. I know in Chassidus it's a big thing too, that the parsha, you live with the parsha each week. It goes according to the times, Not halachically that matters so much, but in machshava or whatever, there is a big inyan behind that as well.
No, they find in the time of the year that we lay certain parshas in the winter, certain parshas in the summer. There definitely are. There's nothing Hakadosh Baruch Hu fears developed. There's nothing that's a coincidence. Yeah. That's true either way. The fact that 99% of the time we're laying these parshas these times, that's not for no reason. But halachically, the question is how much of a connection is there between a particular parsha and a particular Shabbos?
Right.
Okay, we'll hold here. Shkoyach Eli.
Thank you very much. It was great share.
Okay, thanks. Have a good night.
Well, too. Good night.